Crew, I miss you guys. Praying for you often because I'm currently without power too, hence I am sitting in the FAC. But I hope you're doing well. I hope that this lesson will mean something to you as we walk away from Jekyll and Hyde. All right, so it should be Friday when you're watching this. And I'm going to title this lesson, What You Feed Will Grow. Right, and so I really want us to have something that we can take away from this lesson. And I think the best way for me to walk away with something tangible from Jekyll and Hyde is in that statement, right? What you feed will grow. So I want to start with what I think is man's inmost nature, right? That was the question that we were focusing on for this unit. What is the inmost nature of the traveler? Who are we, right? It's that question of identity that we've glanced at in texts like Beowulf and other things, but we're really getting a great look at here. And I'm going to make the argument that man's nature is singular but commingled, right? And so first, I want to say at essence, right, at its deepest core, the seed, that man is a singular divine nature, that he is purely good, right? And that's a big statement. I really do. I believe that man is purely good at his essence. And the reason I say that is because if you hold to the fact that God breathed his image into man, right, that God gave his essence into man, and then you say that man is at heart purely evil, then you would have to say that God's essence is purely evil, right? You would have to say God creating man in his image, if man's deepest core is evil, then God's deepest core is evil, right? And that he created man in his image, which is evil. And so for that reason, I don't hold to that, right? I hold to the fact that at its deepest core, man is good. Man is divine, right? That man has a divine aspect to his nature in being created by God and being a reflection of God's image, right? Like the light in the kaleidoscope, that we are that kaleidoscopic reflection of the light. However, right, but man contains multiple sides that are commingled due to sin, right? Good and evil. Right? I think sin is fully pervasive, right? So it's gotten into the deepest core, and so that we are intricately interwound with good and evil. So I understand when people say, oh, at heart, man is evil, because sin has pervaded even that. But I would say at heart, man is good, being made by a good God. However, sin has fully pervaded, and now we are this commingled, intertwined mix that we can't extricate, right, of good and evil. And we get a great picture of that with Jekyll and Hyde, right? So with Jekyll, we see this character who is fully commingled, right? Good and evil. And I like this. I think it's interesting that Hyde, Mr. Hyde, is purely evil, right? That's the side of Jekyll that's purely evil. However, we don't get a character that's purely good, right? Jekyll is not purely good. Jekyll is a mix of the two. And I think it does a good job of showing our state, right? Which is that we have this part of us that is purely evil, this sin, but we don't yet have the side of us that's purely good, right? And that's what we long for with heaven, right? That's the Sehnsucht. It's like I want to get to that place where everything is purely good, but we're not there yet, right? So you have this character of Dr. Jekyll, who's this normal person. He's like me or like you, who has these good desires and these evil desires, right? And some of these great quotes from the text when he says things like, both sides of me were in dead earnest, right? Like it's not like one side was just playing around and one side was serious. No, both sides of him were serious. He wants to do good and he wants to do evil. Amen to that, right? You want to do good things. You also really want to do bad things. And both sides of those are very real, right? Another quote, he says, I saw that of the two natures, right, the good and the evil, that contended in the field of my consciousness. Even if I could rightly be said to be either, it was only because I was radically both, right? He's both of these things. He's good. He's evil. He is not one or the other, right? He's fully commingled. He cannot be unentangled, if you will, right? He is fully commingled between the two. He later says, this too was myself, right? When he sees Mr. Hyde. Right. And I love that realism, right? That the part of us that does these horrible things, that that steals, that lies, that commits sexual sin, that lusts, that watch pornography, that whatever it may be, whatever you struggle with, right? That addictions, whatnot. That's us, right? That is a picture of us. It's not like, oh, that's my dark side. Well, yeah, it is, but it's you, right? But it's also you that does incredible things. That goes out and helps a neighbor, right? That works hard, that cuts down with a chainsaw a tree that fell in your neighbor's house because of the tornadoes, right? That's you too. And we're so intricately commingled right now because of sin, right? And that's what he says in this fourth quote: all human beings as we meet them are commingled out of good and evil, right? I believe that. And then he says at the end, it is the curse of mankind, right? It is. That's our curse, right? It's the fact that God has created us, what I would say at our deepest core, as good. But due to sin, we are now in this state where we cannot extricate the two on our own, right? That the two are so intermingled. We're like Jekyll and Hyde. Good and darkness are at war. And that leads me into what I think is important. And this is where I get back to that quote, what you feed will grow. We do have this interior beast, right? I really do believe we have this interior beast inside of us that is waiting for a chance to get out, right? And here are just like 4 small takeaways about how we handle that interior beast. The first one is, don't give it the smallest chance, right? Cut its head off. And we talked about that with Beowulf, right? When you face monsters, when you face dragons, if you give it a chance to live, y'all see a motorcycle? That was okay. If you give it a chance to live, it'll crawl back, right? And there's a great quote where Mr. Utterson goes and talks to Dr. Jekyll, and he's like, hey, what about this Mr. Hyde guy? And Mr. Hyde says, or excuse me, Dr. Jekyll says, he is safe, quite safe, mark my words, he will never be heard of, right? And he tries to just put it away, right? Like, oh, I'm in control, I got it, right? Absolutely not, right? Darkness finds a way to come back. In this scene, Dr. Jekyll doesn't cut the head off of Mr. Hyde, right? It says he actually saved his clothes just in case you would need them later, right? If you save that part, it'll come back out, right? If you think, oh, I can handle it on my own, I'll just put that sin away, I'll hide it, I won't address it, it'll crawl back out, right? Don't give it the smallest chance. Secondly, it's sad, but it's true. Darkness is never fully gone, right? It's always lurking. It's there. It's present. It's waiting for its moment, right? Like in Macbeth, it's just waiting for that moment where it's going to leap out and take over, right? And there's this quote that Dr. Jekyll says. He says, above all, if I slept or even dozed for a moment in my chair, it was always as Hyde that I wakened, right? So if he puts himself, in this case, physically asleep, but if we even for a moment drop our guard, go mentally asleep, spiritually asleep, right? Darkness will waken. I mean, it's everywhere, guys. I'm just thinking of examples like teenage boys, right? If you're just chilling on the internet, you let your guard down, right? The desire to look at things you shouldn't be looking at crawls out, right? Substances, if you're around that, right? If you go into a dragon's lair, a dragon might be there. If you drop your guard, darkness will crawl out, right? And I think that's a great reminder. Thirdly, like the coronavirus, I thought of this. I was like, wait, what a great image. Darkness is infectious, right? It grows exponentially. It means quickly. And there's these 2 quotes. All things seem to point to this, that I was slowly losing hold of my original and better self, right? The good part of us, and becoming slowly incorporated with my second and worst, right? Our inner Mr. Hyde. And it grows. It seemed to me as of late as though the body of Edward Hyde had grown in stature, right? We give it a little bit, it takes a lot. What you feed will grow. What you feed will grow. And then lastly, we cannot defeat it on our own, right? We all have this inner Hyde that we don't want out, but we can't defeat it on our own, right? And Jekyll says this. He says, I chose the better part, right? He's like, I wanted to be Jekyll, but was found wanting in the strength to keep it, right? You cannot defeat your dragons on your own. You cannot defeat your interior beast. We need help, right? We desperately need help, which is the salvation story, right? Which is the gospel. This isn't our battle that we can fight on our own. We need Jesus. So here's our unit takeaway. I did the pink sheet because I miss giving these out. But what is the inmost nature of the traveler? I would say that man is a single divine nature, right? That at our deepest core, we are good. But we choose what part of us to feed, right? Due to sin, we are no longer that pure good, right? We're a mix of good and evil. And what we feed will grow, right? If you want to feed darkness, darkness is going to grow. If you want to feed your good side, that is going to grow. And I added this because it just made me laugh. Don't skip spiritual leg day. That's a great, if you guys have ever seen someone like this at the gym, right? He just like only does like biceps and bench press and whatnot. Doesn't ever work out his legs. That's so unhealthy, right? It's so unhealthy. And the question for us is, what are you feeding, right? Are you feeding the side of you that's good? Or are you feeding the darkness? Whatever you feed will grow, right? If you want to do bench press and bicep curls every day, it's going to grow. You're going to be big up here, right? But you're going to look like this guy. If you want to actually get in there and do the work, right? If you want to be spending time in prayer and scripture and reading and all of those things, if you want to be squatting in a sense, right? That's going to grow and that's going to make you healthy. So really, I want to go back to that question, right? Of what are you feeding, and what you feed will grow, right? That we are good, but we have these two sides of us at war. We need to feed the part that is that's worth feeding.